be last in the last verse. This is the word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated. Obstacles to faith. Here we have it. A rich man comes up to Jesus. Good teacher, what must I do to inherit life? And Jesus says, why do you call me good? Then Jesus directs the man to the 10 Commandments, which the rich man insists he has faithfully observed all of his life. And Jesus looked at the man and loved him. That love is important to remember as we observe what happens next, and said, you lack one thing. Go and sell all you own and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. This then comes, follow me. Follow me. The man is shocked at his hard teaching and goes away grieving, for he had many possessions. This encounter set up the famous teacher that follows, which has to do with money and possessions. It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God. The disciples are as baffled and upset by this as the rich man had been. Then who can be saved? Jesus' only response is the cryptic, for mortals it's impossible, but not for God. For God all things are possible. There are some fundamental assumptions that most of us in our culture of today especially accept uncritically as true. And they are as new beliefs that progress is invariably good. The more wealth is necessary, better. That is the nature of the financial indicators. The gross national product or the Dow Jones Industrial Average. To grow and to grow and to grow. And that, to proclaim anything else, is unpatriotic at best. Yet, here we have this difficult teaching, the teaching of Jesus, delivered to a certain rich man. This high roller steps right out of his Cadillac or BMW or whatever it was that he had, and he runs up to the popular teacher with Gucci loafers on his feet, the latest cell phone I left out in my car, a gold Rolex gleaming on his wrist. Teacher, he asked, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus gave him a Sunday school answer. Yeah, I know all of that stuff already. I bet you folks have heard that. Now I go to church, I work hard, I play hard, I keep my nose clean, I set my parents up in this luxury condo down in Fort Lauderdale, if it's still there. I've never robbed a liquor store. or run off with another man's wife. But still, I feel empty. Somehow I feel this isn't living. There's got to be more. Got to be. Well, you know, as Eugene Peterson paraphrases Jesus' further response, Jesus looked him hard in the eye and loved him. He said, the man's face clouded over. This was the last thing he expected to hear. And he walked off with a heavy heart. He was holding on so tight to a lot of things and not going to let it go. He wasn't going to let it go. This seems at first glance like such a harsh story. Who indeed, as the disciples asked, can ever make it into heaven if the entryway is so tiny as a needle's eye? Yet Jesus is not condemning the man. No way. No, he's not condemning him. Far from it. Mark tells us that when the Lord first cast eyes on him, he loved him. This is a challenging teaching, to be sure, but one that is framed in gentleness and love. Jesus really wants the young man to come over and join him, to sell all he has, distribute the proceeds to the poor, and hit the road with him and the 12. I must tell you now that Jesus is not condemning this man. I'm not trying to induce guilt on anyone. It is he who is worried about how to attain eternal life. It is he who fears that something in his life is broken. Something he doesn't know how to fix. Haven't you been in that situation before? It's as though the young man is standing in the floodwaters right up to his neck. The river is still rising, and he can't swim. There's Jesus on the bank. Yeah, he's standing there. And in his hands, he's got a life preserver. And he rears back and he throws the life preserver out to the guy. The guy looks at it, stares at it, and then turns back. Turns back to it. Take it, Jesus says. Just reach out and grab it. It's right there in front of you, right in front of your eyes. But with a mournful look in his eyes, he just turns away. Turns away. A key to understanding this passage is the list of commandments that Jesus gives. Back in the beginning, when the man first addresses him, Jesus answers, "You know the commandments." Then he goes on to list a few. But strangely enough, Jesus doesn't list all 10 commandments. He only lists 5. Well, 6 actually. But you shall not defraud is really a part of you shall not bear false witness. Jesus lists the 5 commandments having to do with human relationships. You know, the murder, the adultery, the theft, the lying, the failing to honor one's parents. The rich man has no trouble with these. Nor do many Christians even today, whose the list of the most important ethical issues begins and ends with human relationships. Sexual ethics is surely on the list, to be sure. But economic justice, that's nowhere to be found. Jesus isn't so concerned with these 5 commandments, Numbers 4 through 9. He knows the young man has kept them, for the most part, that is. It's the others. It's those others that are a little more pragmatic. Specifically, number 1, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. There is one thing the rich man loves more than anything else in the world, even God. He loves the material comforts. They are the object of his worship. And when he finds himself in deep spiritual waters, the weight of that golden idol will drag him down for sure. Right down. And when we in America have a life like no other in the world, the truth is that life in America has improved so much in the past century that we have forgotten what it is to struggle. We hear whines that the schools are overcrowded today. Actually, the ratio of students to teachers has gone, since my wife's been teaching, 30 to 1 to about 19 now, 19 to 1. We hear whining about pay, yet total compensation adjusted for the inflation of today has tripled since 1947 or 57. And the cost of necessities have plummeted. Food in 1950 represented about 1/3 of a family's total expenditures. Today, it's 1/7 or even less. America's gross domestic product is greater than the next 5 countries combined. Our unemployment rate is right down to almost 2-3%. While higher than it was before back in 2001. It's still lower than the average U.S. rate in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Unemployment in France is gone right out of sight. In Germany, same thing. And we're complaining. 2/3 of Americans now own their own homes. We have more cars, more children in college than more cultural institutions. We work shorter hours, and on the whole, we're more prosperous than any other nation in the history, and far better off than we were in the past. Could this be our obstacle to faith, as in the gospel reading of today with the rich man who does not want to give up his wealth? Could this be our problem of today, why our church aren't filled? Could be. Could be. Let us pray. Great God, you have charged us to have no other gods before you. We want to keep you first in our hearts. But it seems that every time we look around, there is another gleaming idol attracting our attention. The one we cannot seem to look away from is the God of wealth. Give us the courage to let go of whatever weight is holding us back from full devotion to you, golden or otherwise.